breaking news tonight as Europe enters a new phase of political and economic instability. One of its biggest economies is sliding into crisis, and a crisis that's too familiar. Italy. Moments ago, the Italian Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte, officially resigned to the president after his coalition government collapsed. Mr. Conte was forced out by the man sitting next to him during his resignation speech in the Senate, his own interior minister and coalition partner, the far-right party leader Matteo Salvini, who withdrew his support from the coalition. The Prime Minister warned this could have grave consequences.
The decision to postpone the communication of a decision evidently taken some time ago, and I regret to say it with such clarity, is a gesture of grave institutional and disrespectful imprudence towards the Parliament, and in any case, is liable to tip the country into a spiral of political uncertainty and financial instability.
Barbie Nadeau is for us in Rome tonight. OK, earlier on Express, you were sort of saying that that this was a crisis. How deep a crisis tonight?
Well, I think it's a deep crisis, and I think you see that reflected just in some of the commentary I'm watching on the Italian press tonight. You know, it is, what are we going to do now? Matteo Salvini wants to be prime minister. Sergio Mattarella, the president, who has just accepted the resignation of Giuseppe Conte, has to decide if he's going to pave the way for that to happen, or if he's going to try to put all those puzzle pieces together from the election just a year and a half ago, and try to form a new government. That's going to be a very daunting task. He had a very hard time doing it the first time around, which is why we ended up with this sort of odd government between Matteo Salvini and the five-star anti-establishment party. So that was the best he could come up with a year ago, and so it's going to be difficult for him to come up with anything better now, and even more difficult potentially to pave the way for these elections, Richard.
It's August in Italy, and traditionally, of course, the country comes pretty much to a stop over, at least in the later part of the month. People will be coming back to work first week of September, realising that there isn't a functioning government, or at best there'll be a caretaker government. So how likely are new, fresh elections?
Well, I think, you know, it's very hard to say right now. Tomorrow, Mattarella has got to carry out some consultations to try to determine if he could first form a government. If that's not going to work, then it is very likely there'll be elections. It's an interesting note. The last time Italy voted in the autumn was in 1919, 100 years ago, and that paved the way to the rise of Benito Mussolini. And a lot of Italians are talking about that, saying, we don't vote in the autumn, we vote in the spring. But the way the Constitution is stipulated, they have to vote. If they call elections, it has to be within 70, 75 days. And that is, you know, that's one of the big concerns that Italians have, is we don't vote in the fall. How could we possibly do it? Will Mattarella try to buy some time? You know, there's really a lot up in the air, all while Italy has to pass a budget, all while Brexit is taking place. There's so much more than Italy at stake here, Richard.